Hey guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in February. So in February I read 15 total books, which is more than January, which is impressive given it's a shorter month, but you know, just happens that way sometimes. And of those 15 books, I read 6 fantasy, 6 romance, 2 mystery, and 1 sci-fi, and as well 2 of my books this month were rereads. And my average rating was 4, just a straight 4. So like that's pretty great. Really looking at like my book journal of like my ratings, it's just like mostly 4 stars and just like a couple of 5s and like 1 or 2 a little below that, and just averaged out to like a great average of a 4. So the first book I read this month was The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This is an FF historical romance following Lucy, who is this aspiring woman scientist, astronomer, who answers this letter to help translate this text by this Countess, Catherine, whose late husband left this unfinished project, and she kind of wants to wrap it up and kind of like wash her hands of it. So she needs to get this translation done as part of that. And as they end up living together, and like, they don't work together on the translation per se, but like exist with each other while being worked on, they end up falling in love. And this was a mixed bag. It was kind of just like an average book because we had things I liked and things I didn't, equally in both. And so the things I've liked, I really liked the setting. The women in science in the historical setting was so my jam. It reminded me a lot of the memoirs of Lady Trent, which is a cross-genre comparison to fantasy. That's not really a good comparison in literally any other way, because that's not even particularly romantic fantasy, but just like that women in science in a historical setting vibe. Loved it. I also liked the tone of the writing, and I think it was well written, and I just like that. I also loved the ending of this book. It was so good. Like the way the non-romantic plot wrapped up at the very end was, it was so good. The thing that I didn't love, and that kind of brought this down to just kind of average, was the characters, I think, had some chemistry, and I thought they were good together, but what I like in romance is reading the chase. I like reading the banter, the build-up, you know, the tension between our characters. And so I don't like it when the main characters get together for real within the first half of the book. And they got together at like the 25% mark. It was way too early. It was like I remember this. I remember I had just hit the point where I'm like, all right, I can see the romantic tension starting here. Like I can start to see the beginnings of that build-up happening. I'm now excited to see it ramp up, and then like in the next 3 pages they were together. I was like, so it felt a little rushed because I didn't feel like we had much at all build up before, and also because they got together so early, the whole middle chunk was just them like existing. Like the middle didn't really take that time to then focus on advancing the non-romantic plot a lot. And since there was no tension to focus on or like romantic plot to focus on, it was just kind of existing together. And that's just like not what I want to read in the romantic. I need either to be reading about the non-romantic plot or the tension between them. And so that middle chunk was just boring to me. And then it ramped up again at the end once we kind of hit the conflict, and then them like reuniting, and then like the non-romantic plots wrap up. All that sucked me back in. So like I ended the book feeling on a high note because I really loved the ending, but that middle part, I did consider DNFing it because I was just like, I'm just bored. So very mixed bag here. I think I'm more of the unpopular opinion. I read this as part of a book club, and everyone else seemed to like it a lot more than I did. I just think the pacing of the relationship just didn't bother them as much, and I don't think it was like poorly written. It's just the decision made. It's just something I don't like. So it didn't matter that she did it, like how she wrote it, because it just wasn't going to be a decision I enjoyed. So anyways, mixed bag, but definitely glad I read it, because again, things I liked about it. I might pick up another book that by this author that definitely didn't turn me off of this author, but I'm not racing to read the next book in the series either because I didn't love this. Next, I did a reread of The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. Please excuse my hairband. This is definitely in 2 pieces. We don't know what happened with all my Wheel of Time books. They're all in poor shape, and I can't explain why. I really can't. But this is a reread. This is the 4th book in the Wheel of Time, and I thought it was good. I gave it a 4 stars, which is what I had originally given it when I read it, I think like 10 years ago. I really like Perrin's chapters in this book, and I know one of Perrin's chapters was my favorite chapter from my first read, so I think that's also, again, a consistent opinion between reads. My tastes have changed in 10 years, but this book, I guess, fits in the Venn diagram of where they haven't changed. But yeah, I really love Perrin's chapters, which makes me hopeful for the slog, because I've heard a lot of the slog has to do with Perrin's chapters, and maybe his chapters just get worse, but maybe me liking these is a good sign. we'll see. We'll see. You can tell me how wrong I am in the comments. I think what keeps me mostly, these books are just so long that everyone feels like it hits a slow point that keeps it from being like a 5-star, absolutely loving it. Because I always hit one chunk where I'm just like, oh, I gotta get through this part. And I just like can't explain what, it's like every time there's like one chunk that does that. So, but overall, good. This is definitely my favorite of the OG Wheel of Time covers. I just think the colors work very well for me. Next up, I read Well Played by Jenn DeLuca. This is the second book in the Well Met Renaissance Fair series, and I enjoyed this. I thought it was really cute. I understand why this is kind of a controversial one within the series, and it's definitely probably the least well-liked, because there is a catfishing storyline within it, and like, I get it. That doesn't work for people. I can't say like I love that part of the story. Like, I'm not here like, give me all the catfishing romance storylines. Like, I'm not here for that. But I think because I'd heard so much about it, and when I picked it up, I was like, I've picked this up acknowledging that there is a little bit of, there's some catfishing in the storyline. I just like accepted it and just didn't let it bother me. I think being prepared for it. If I hadn't been prepared, I think I would have been more bothered. But because I like picked it up and knew what was going to happen, I just accepted it, kind of just turned my opinion off for that part and just moved past it, I guess. So, but I know people don't like that, and I get it. It's totally fair. I did consider not reading it because of that, but I decided just to go ahead and give it a shot anyways. And I'm glad I did. Like, I love the setting of this series. The Renaissance Fair is so fun. I almost wish I had waited to read this closer to the summer or late spring, because it really made me want to go to the Renaissance Fair, and my local Renaissance Fair doesn't come to town until like April. And so it's almost here, but not quite. And yeah, I love the setting. And but beyond the catfishing part, like once we got past that part of the plot, I did think the main couple was really cute together once they were together, like with their real identities. I know I feel awkward like even like liking it because of the original setup, but here we are. Yeah, it was just cute. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's not my favorite in the series, but I definitely thought it was really, really fun entry into this series. Next, I read Youre Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkanen. This is a mystery thriller, and this one I would classify as fun but kind of forgettable because it's a couple weeks later and I kind of forgot all the details of the plot already. Like, I remember I was talking to my mom about it a couple days ago because I borrowed her copy and I was finally returning it, and she was like, oh, I don't remember what this is about, because she'd read it like over a year ago, and I was like trying to describe it. I was like, shoot, I don't remember a lot of the details. I remember some like big details. I remember a couple of the twists, but I don't remember a lot of the inner details. So this was one of those fun but doesn't stick with you kind of thrillers, and that's fine. You know, sometimes that's kind of all I really want from a thriller, is to have fun in the moment. But yeah, this one it was a good mix of like things I figured out by piecing together clues and things I didn't expect, which I do like. However, I think some of the things I didn't expect felt like pointless twists. I was like, what was even the point of that being part of it? So, it was fun, but nothing memorable. I have another one of their books on my shelf, and so I will be interested to see if that's kind of just their jam, or if I like another one better by them. We'll see. Next, I read my second reread of the month, which was The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan, which is the first book in the Heroes of the Olympus series, which is the sequel series to the Percy Jackson series. So, I never got around to the fifth one. I read this series as they came out, and by the time the fifth one came out, I was like, I need to reread the fourth one, and I never did. So I own all 5 and have since the fifth one came out, and I'm finally rereading the first 4 so I can finish the series. And I was really excited to return to this world. Percy Jackson was like a big series amongst my friends when I was younger, and like we were super into it. I remember playing like Percy Jackson themed hide and seek at like my friend's birthday party one year. And so Greek mythology too is just like, or Roman mythology, I guess the series is is the Roman side of it. It's always been just like something I've enjoyed, and I've been enjoying retelling, so definitely excited to get back kind of to the OG in my reading journey and retelling of this world. And I've seen the booktubers who've been reading it also recently have gotten me excited to return. So yeah, anyways, definitely glad I finally picked up this as a reread, and I thought it was just as fun the second time as an adult, and I just had a great time with it. I'm definitely looking forward to continuing with Son of Neptune. The one thing though that I had forgotten, and I'm a little miffed by, and this is completely unrelated to the quality of the book, is that the series doesn't have fun chapter titles. Like, that was like half the fun of the Percy Jackson books, so they had fun chapter titles, but this one doesn't. The chapter is just the name of whose point of view it is, and which is like so lame. So, a little disappointed there, but obviously that does not actually affect my enjoyment of the content of this book. Next, I read Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham. I have a full video review on this one, which I'll link, so I will keep my thoughts brief on this one, but this is my first Daniel Abraham. This is also the first in his new fantasy trilogy, and I enjoyed it. It's definitely a slower paced, kind of more character focused read, but I'm very intrigued by the world. I enjoyed the characters, and I can't wait to read the second one. Next, I read The Rose Society by Marie Lu. This is the second book in the Young Elite series, and wow, Marilu really leaned into the darkness in this one. The first one ended, and I remember thinking, like, you know, we could really lean in to this dark path we could be going down, or she could rein it in. The way it ended, I could see it going both ways and working, and she really leaned it in. Like, she does not know how to pull her punches. I really appreciate this series being kind of told from the point of view of someone descending into villainy. It's definitely something different than what I've read, and I enjoy it. I think it's really solid too, and it's just a different perspective of a fantasy story that I've read. I'm sure there are others that exist from this point of view, but I have not read any of them, and not in YA, and so I definitely appreciate that about it. And yeah, definitely a very solid series, and I enjoyed the second installment in it. Next, I read Well Matched by Jenn DeLuca, which is the third book in the Well Met series, and this one might be my favorite of the three. And this one, the main couple, April and Mitch, we had been teased with their dynamic in the previous books, just seeing them interact, because they're siblings and friends of the other characters from the book, so we just see them as secondary characters, and so having seen the relationship teased, especially in book 2, got me very excited for this one. In addition, we have the fake dating trope, which I adore, and in this one, we also flip the Sunshine Grump dynamic on its head. I feel like usually the guy is the grump and the girl is the sunshine, but in this case, it is the other way around, and I thought it was just delightful. Unfortunately, though, this one did feature the Renaissance Fair less, which is one of my favorite things about this series, but I love the romance enough that I was okay. I was fine with it. I also think this one did a really good job of balancing having the romance as the main storyline, but still doing a really good job exploring April's kind of self-journey as she's facing down being an empty nester and kind of realizing her plans for what that was going to look like might be changing with these kind of new friends and these roots she inadvertently placed in this town. And so I think it did a good job balancing both, but the romance was still definitely the storyline. It was definitely still a romance book, but I think it did a good job addressing this other one meaningfully and not just having it be pushed aside because it was a romance book, but it didn't become the main plot and overshadow the romance either. So yeah, so this was the last book that's been published, and I learned at the end of this one that there's going to be a fourth one, and I'm kind of intrigued by who the main couple is. We'll see. I'm intrigued. Next up, I read what is my favorite book from February, and that is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. So, book 1 ended on a cliffhanger, and I finally got a hold of a copy and read the second one, and of course, it ended on a cliffhanger. And now I have to wait in agony until September when it came out. Like, that's my entire Goodreads review of this is, excuse me, that ending. I will be over here in agony waiting until September. That's it. That's all I wrote on Goodreads. My thoughts on this book. But going beyond that, I really, really liked both the direction just the plot in regards to the Scholomance itself took, as well, I really liked Elle's character in this book. She ended up being this, like, inadvertent freshman babysitter for, like, some of the book, and it was hilarious. Like, I thought it was so funny. I was really into it, and I think this one just, if you like the first book in the series, like, you're gonna like this one just as much. This one is just as good. Like, if you didn't like the first one, you're probably not gonna like this one, but I loved it. I love seeing Elle's developing her personal relationship with the other people in the stories. Like, you start to see her become friends with people in book 1, and you really see her cement those friendships and relationships in this one. I just love seeing this journey for her. I just loved it. I love her voice. I can't wait to read the third one in September. Next, I read 6 Weeks by Mur Lafferty. This was pitched to me as an isolated closed circle mystery, but in space with clones. And so it really delivered on that mystery aspect of this. I enjoyed the closed circle mystery. That's just a trope I find myself enjoying. I think it did a good job with that. And it kept you guessing, have you start piece together things. I also was surprised with how well thought out the world building around the clones was. Like, she really put a lot of thought into kind of the history and the ethics and the laws that were built around this new cloning science, which, given that this book was primarily pitched as a mystery plot that just happened to be in a space setting, I wasn't really expecting a ton of that sci-fi world building, and if it wasn't there, I would not have been bothered by it, because again, picked it up from the mystery. But I was pleasantly surprised with how much work she did put into building up that kind of back world building of it. It was really interesting. However, I do think the characters in this book fell kind of flat, which for me doesn't really bother me in this kind of story, but might bother you depending on how much you want your characters to be rich, even anyways. Like, again, I definitely don't pick up this kind of story for deep characters, so that was fine with me. I also didn't love the writing style in this one. It was very straightforward in this odd matter-of-fact kind of way that kind of bounced off me a little bit. Not enough to make me dislike the book overall, and I definitely still read the book. Like, it didn't end up making me take forever to read it, but I didn't love it either. Next, I read Kamila Knows Best by Farah Heron, and this is an Emma by Jane Austen retelling. And so I love Emma retellings, though I have never read Emma. So maybe I really should. I really should read Emma, because usually with retellings, I find myself either not knowing the source material and therefore just like enjoying the story, maybe learning about the source material later, or comparing it to the source material, just being like, finding like, ooh, okay, that character's that character, and I see how we translated this to this. But instead, because I've never read Emma, but I read enough Emma retellings and rewatched several, I instead found myself comparing aspects of this book and characters to which Clueless character they were, because I've seen Clueless many a time, and I was like, you know, I should just read Emma so that I can actually compare it to normal source material instead of comparing it to Clueless as if Clueless was the source material, which it sure isn't. So this one we follow Kamila, who is an accountant who lives with her dad to help take care of his health, and then she also likes to throw weekly Bollywood parties with a lot of her friends. She loves hosting. She, in her free time, volunteers at this dog shelter, and she's in this book, she's working on planning a doggy prom that's like a promotional activity to help get dogs adopted. And so she kind of breaks the stereotypes of this stuffy accountant, which kind of comes into play in the book when people kind of assume she's not happy as an accountant. Like some of the conflict revolves around her dad just assuming she did the accountant just to please him, and him being like, oh, you're free to not do that anymore. And she's like, no, but I actually love it. And people are like, what? No, you love wearing fun clothes and dogs. And she's like, but I can love both. So that was like a big kind of conflict, like source of conflict there, is kind of how her breaking stereotypes made people not take her seriously, which I thought was really interesting and well done. Beyond that, it was just fun. It was just a fun story too. Our love interest is like this old family friend that she's been friends with forever, who's like knows her dad and like knows the family and stuff. I thought they were really cute together. They worked really well together, and from what I can tell, based on the number of Emma retellings I've seen, it seemed like a pretty good adaptation. Like it hit a lot of the same beats that other retellings hit, which I assume means, you know, they're hitting significant Emma rebeats, but like, again, I can't say that for sure. There were a couple scenes though that did feel like they were included only to shoehorn in like, oh, this plot point from the book. And once again, I haven't read the book, but the way they felt shoehorned in, like the scene felt like it was forced in, and thus I assume because she wanted to hit a specific plot beat or something from the book, and they didn't quite flow as well, but those were few and far between. So overall, definitely a really fun book. Next, I read Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall, and this book was just fine. This was definitely my most disappointing book of the month because I love boyfriend material by this author. That's the only book I had read before this one by this author, and so I had high expectations for this one, and the crushing disappointment I felt and not loving it was real. So this book wasn't horrible. Actually, I think it was my lowest rated. It actually was my lowest rated book of the month because I only had one 3-star, and it was this one. But my reading month was good enough that the 3-star was my worst of the month. And usually I have one worse than that. So I guess it was my worst of the month. But this one follows Valentine, or Valentine, I guess, maybe would be how you would inflect that. Val, who is proposing to Arabella, who's like a long time family friend, for a marriage of convenience. Like, he's not really into her. He's kind of doing it because their both late fathers had kind of planned for them to marry when they got of age, and so he's finally pursuing that now. And she's super not into it. One, their fathers have passed, so she doesn't feel like the need to live up to that promise from when they were young. And also, she's a romantic, and the idea of entering in a marriage of convenience is just like not romantic, and she's not into it, and that's fine. So she runs away. And so Valentine tracks her down with the help of her twin Bonnie, and this book was the most over-the-top campy book I think I've ever read. And so if you don't like camp, do not read this book. Don't do it. Don't even think about it. I like it sometimes. And so this book was constantly towing the line of my tolerance for campiness. Some scenes worked really well, and I thought were funny, they were enjoyable, usually when it was just the main two characters, and there was one side character, the butler. I loved all the scenes with his butler. And then other scenes were too much, and they were just like cringy and grating and how campy they were. And usually those were scenes that involved the side characters, especially Arabella. I hated reading Arabella. She was so over the top. It was ridiculous. It was like the most melodramatic thing I've ever read in my life, and I just could not with her. And so the main plot of this book, of them chasing her down, completely failed to hook me as a plot because, one, you weren't rooting for them to get together, so I didn't care. I wasn't rooting for him to find her for love. And if they found her, that means I had to read her on my page again, and I didn't want that. So the plot itself failed to hook me. I did think also when they were pursuing her and they encountered people who had already encountered her, innkeepers or people helping her, she was just so over the top and telling her story that they would all look at Valentine like he was this evil man who was trying to murder her, and it was so eye-rolling the way this happened. Because here's the thing, I'm totally here for historical romances where people are running away from marriage of conveniences because they want to marry for love. But marriage of conveniences were a thing. That's not an uncommon thing. So this reaction of strangers being oh, the horror, this is the worst thing you could ever do. I'm but it's so common that you don't know these people. You don't know their story. You don't know any of the details. So the fact they were reacting that much just to the concept of her being proposed to for marriage of convenience, I was just no. I don't know. It was too much there. I did think the main character, the two guys who fell in love, were cute together. I did think they worked together. I thought they both brought out the best in each other. Valentine kind of mellowed Bonnie down just a little bit, and Bonnie kind of brought Val out of his shell just a little bit. They melded well together, and I did like them together. I am definitely still interested in reading more Alexis Hall books. Definitely there are several contemporaries they have I'm interested in, and they have another historical coming out this year that the cover looks less campy than this one, so I'm interested in reading that one. But I definitely would not continue in this series by then, because the next book follows, I think, Arabella's best friend, and I liked the best friend character fine, but I hated Arabella so much that if the best friend's gonna be the main character, Arabella's gonna be in it because she's the best friend, and I do not want to read her again. So definitely turn off from the series. But yeah, unfortunately, disappointingly, this was a miss for me. I'm very sad about it. Next is another kind of campy book, and that is Finlay, Donovan, Knox and Dead by Elle Cosimano. This is the second book in the Finlay Donovan series, and it's just as zany and fun as the first one. I really enjoyed this entry into the series and the continuing adventures of Finlay and Vero. I think I like this one just as much as the first one. I think I've seen a lot of people say the first one better, but I thought they were pretty equal in my opinion, and they're just fun. I think this book, I realized while reading it, delivers on exactly what I wanted the 3 times I've tried cozy mysteries. And this one hits it. This gives me what I wanted from cozy mysteries, but in a way that I liked a lot better than the pushed mysteries that are pushed and published as cozy mysteries. Because I don't know if I've ever heard anyone refer to this one as a cozy mystery. Yeah, looking at the main genres on Goodreads, it is tagged cozy mystery, but not super high I would actual cozy mysteries are. But it gives me what I want from cozy mysteries. This civilian just kind of getting into capers, trying to cover up this crime or investigate their crime kind of thing. It satisfies that desire of a story for me. So I really like that for that, and I would like to find more mysteries that hit what I want from a cozy mystery, but in the way Finlay Donovan does, where the writing, I don't know, something about just the cozy mystery vibe just doesn't hit with me. And again, maybe I've chosen the wrong ones, but it just doesn't, and this one hit, and I like to read more like this one. Next, I read The Name of All Things by Jenn Lyons. This is the second book in the Chorus of Dragons series. It is a sequel to A Ruin of Kings, and this was absolutely not what I expected at all from the sequel. I don't necessarily have firm plot expectations or anything from this one, really, but I expected the sequel to feel more sequel-y, and so this one's technically a sequel in that it literally takes place picking up 3 days after the end of The Ruin of Kings. But in reality, this read like a companion novel. You could almost read this and the first book in either order and be fine. And these are not negative things. It's just absolutely not what I expected. I did not expect it to be just kind of a companion novel, but I enjoyed it. I think I liked it better than the first one, actually. The narrative structure in this one is much less confusing than the first one. It is still told in a flashback, but where the first one was two different, where the first one had the main story and or the current timeline and then two flashback timelines about the same character but at different points of his life simultaneously. This one has two people telling the flashback story, but they're telling the same story and they just alternate telling it. So it's much less confusing of a narrative structure for people that might have liked the first one and are unsure if they want to continue, if that's kind of the thing you're unsure of. This one, again, does have flashbacks, but it is a linear flashback instead of like weird time jump flashback. This one also has footnotes still, and I wasn't sure if we were going to continue the footnote trend. And I'm so glad we did, and I hope that means that all of them have footnotes, because I discovered I really like footnotes in the style of this book where it's like another person adding snarky comments onto the main story. I'm like so into that. I love that. It's a different person who is speaking the footnotes this time than the first one, but still just as enjoyable. And I think I really liked, so the plot of this one is, it's telling the backstory of who I presume will be a main character moving forward. So Kieran was the main character in book one. He's in this book. He is the one that's listening to the story this time. This one we get the story of Janelle and Janelle's backstory, kind of leading up to where we are now. And so I think I just liked Janelle more than Kieran. I think I like Janelle and all of the side characters in like the Janelle story. I think I warmed up to and enjoyed them quicker than the characters in Kieran's. And so a lot of characters in Kieran's I liked by the end, but I think I just like latched onto these characters quicker, and so therefore I think I just liked this one a little better. I think I also had a little bit more handle on the world, and so I didn't have quite as much unknown, I guess, trying to figure out in this one. Which, I mean, that's just pretty common in fantasy. So, definitely like this one. And we explore, like, a totally different part of the world, too. We learn about different cultures in this world. It really expands the world from the first one. And I am definitely intrigued where the third one's going to go. The third one, I really hope, is just a sequel. Like, the way this one ended, I'm like, I hope the third one just moves forward and doesn't do more flashbacks. I wouldn't hate it if it did flashbacks again, but I'm intrigued. I don't know if it's going to do flashbacks again or not. We'll find out, I suppose. And the last book I read in February was Isn't It Romantic by Lyssa K. Adams. This is the fourth book in the Romance Book Club series, and this is just another fun installment in the series. This book delivers on the self-aware cheesiness that I have come to expect from this series, and I liked it. I think if you liked the previous books, you would like this one too. It's just, you know, par for the course with this series. It was fun. This one tells the story of Vlad the Russian, and this is a second chance romance with a marriage of convenience backstory where Vlad comes to America to play hockey, and he offers to marry his childhood friend Elena so that she can come to the U.S. and get out of Russia, because there's some things happening in her story that she kind of wants to, you know, maybe get away from. So she comes to America, but then she ends up leaving, well, they're still married, but leaving him to go to college in a different state, and they kind of just like live separately for 6 years. Like they don't pursue a real romantic relationship. They kind of fall off being friends too. Like they kind of just go their separate ways and are just still legally married. In the beginning of this book, Vlad says, I want us to give a real marriage a shot, right as she's deciding to tell him, I'm going back to Russia. So it ends up being a second chance romance between them, because he ends up getting injured, and so she stays around to kind of help care for him, because it happens, and they connect and kind of reconnect during that period. And I just thought it was delightful. I just thought they were really cute together. I thought they worked really well together. And I thought this was going to be the last entry in the series, but I learned there is another one. So that's exciting surprise coming out later this year. So those are all the books I read in February. If you read any of them, let me know what you thought of them and tell me what your favorite books you read in February were, and I will see you in my next video.